Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss the poem Dover Beach. Dover Beach is written by Matthew Arnold and his lifespan is 1822 to 1888. So fairly 66 years is his lifetime, and he was born in December 1822 and died in April 1888. Arnold was educated at Oxford, and after graduating, he got his first poem published in the year 1849. Arnold worked as an inspector of schools for several years, so he knew the strengths and weaknesses of education and schools in England. He was professor of poetry at Oxford from 1857 to 1867. Arnold started as a poet, but later he turned in social and literary criticism. He did not write much poetry after turning critic. These are some of his popular essays. Thus, he is considered as a great poet critic of the Victorian age. Moving on to the next slide, which tells about the poem. Dover Beach was published in the year 1867. This is a short lyric poem, and it is considered an elegy. Why this poem is considered elegy? Because the poet laments the dying light of faith. An elegy is a poem which mourns about the loss of some person which is dear. This poem shows Arnold's concern for the world also. And this poem was written when Arnold was traveling in a ship along the English Channel when he was on honeymoon trip. And when we say that this poem shows Arnold's concern for the world, it is said because when this poem was written, that period was a period of conflict between religion and science. Due to the industrialization and development in science, faith of the people in religious beliefs and spiritual values was dwindling. And this poem laments or mourns this fact that people are going away from religion. We will start the poem. The first stanza of the poem is like, The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. So we know that this poem was written on the beach of Dover, and Arnold describes the scene around there, and he says that sea is showing peace. The tide is full, there is ample water in the sea. The moon lies fair, moon looks beautiful upon the straits. Straits is a narrow channel connecting two areas of sea, and we know that the two areas here are France and England. So on the French coast, Arnold is standing on the English coast, and he says that the French coast, on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. He is able to see the light which is coming, which is seen and then which goes. Maybe it is the light of the lighthouse tower which is revolving, and once it's seen there and once it's gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. So the poet is able to see light on the French coast, and on the beach of England he is able to see the big rocks which are glimmering and vast. Huge rocks, they are vast or big rocks, and they are standing out in the tranquil bay. So this bay between both English and French coast is peaceful. Moving to the next stanza. Come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray, where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles, which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Come to the window. So this stanza starts with poet saying someone that he or she should come to the window. We know that this poem was written while Arnold was on his honeymoon trip. So maybe he is calling his wife, and with this line we can say that this is a monologue where one person is speaking and we can say that there is another person listening. So this stanza goes, come to the window, sweet is the night air, Arnold is happy to see the beautiful scene around. He depicts the calm sea and says, in fact, he invites his partner to enjoy the sight. The breeze is soothing. In the next line, he asks to pay attention to the sound which is created by the waves breaking on the lower beach. Listen. He says, listen. You hear the grating roar. So that means he is saying to someone, he is saying to his partner that pay attention to the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. Here in this particular stanza, we can clearly note the shift of Arnold's mood. Till now, he was enjoying the scene. He says, sweet is the night air. But suddenly, he shifts and says, grating roar of pebbles. Pebbles? What are pebbles? Pebbles are small stones. But their sound is not roaring sound. Roaring sound is a sound which is not soothing. So, we can see suddenly there is a shift in Arnold's mood. In the opening line, he says sweet, and in the fourth line, the sound becomes roar. So he says, come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. So the land is shining with moonlight, and they are able to listen the sound made by pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. When with the movement of the waves, the pebbles are thrown back. At their return up the high strand, begin and cease and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow and bring the eternal note of sadness in. In all this tranquility, Arnold hears this harsh sound, and this repeated forward and backward movement of the waves. Arnold thinks that this is a sad and monotonous scene. Though the scenery is eye-catching, but the wearisome movement of the waves remind him of the misery in human lives, which keeps coming and going like waves, but never disappear completely. So, just as the waves are eternal to the sea, misery is eternal to the human lives. Next, Arnold says, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. Arnold remembers Sophocles hearing the same sound from the Greek coast. Sophocles, who is one of the greatest of Greek dramatists who lived in the 5th century BC, and he heard these sounds made by waves sitting on the Greek coast. And according to Arnold, it had reminded Sophocles of the ebb and flow of human suffering. According to the Greek writer, suffering, like the sea, had its high tide and low tide, but it never disappeared, just as the sea never go dry. So, Arnold, sitting far from the Mediterranean, has same thoughts as Sophocles. Then Arnold says, the sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind down the vast edges, drear and naked shingles of the world. The sea reminds Arnold of the rise and fall of faith. Sea of faith is faith in religion. So, before industrialization, people were more into religion. They believed in religion, but after industrialization and progress of science, they reasoned before believing, and when they were told something, they reasoned. So Arnold is unhappy with this situation, and he wants to convey that there was a time when people had full faith in religion. The sea of faith had encircled the world like a silver girdle. Girdle is a belt or band worn around waist. So he says that sea of faith had encircled the world like a silver girdle, but all that is now a thing of past. Arnold then comments that The sea is no more offering peace. In fact, it is gloomy. Melancholy. Melancholy means it's sad, it's gloomy. And it has realized the growing lack of faith. One can hear the sea roaring, a sound of unhappiness. The last slide mentions about some of the questions from this poem. The first one is contrast the opening lines with the concluding lines of the poem and comment upon them. The opening line is the sea is calm tonight, and the concluding line is where ignorant armies clash by night. So it is both the lines are in contrast with each other, and it shows the shift in the mood of the poet also. The poet is at peace when he starts the poem, but at the end he is disturbed by the situation existing in the world. So we can trace the movement of the mood of the poet starting from the first line to the last line. The second question is write note on the personal element in the poem, and the unhappiness which the poet is experiencing himself is expressed in this poem. So whatever he himself or whatever the poet is personally experiencing is expressed in the poem. So this is the personal element, and he tries to express his own feelings. The last one is write a short note on the imagery in Dover Beach, and as the poem starts, the sea is calm tonight, we are able to make or we are able to imagine a picture or scenery of sea, a sea which is calm, and Arnold paints various images associated with sea, and he vividly paints with words, and his words bring various or multiple images of sea in our mind, and words like girdle, shingles, ebb and flow, darkling plain, they instantly paints a picture in our mind, and we are able to associate what the words are painting or what the words are conveying. This slide mentions about some of the poetic or literary devices used in the poem. The first one is alliteration, and Alliteration is repetition of consonant sounds usually used at the beginning of the words. And example in the poem is line number 31, lie, like, land. So the repetition of le sound here is example of alliteration. And the next one is metaphor. Metaphor is used when two different objects are compared and where the comparison is implicit. And example of metaphor in the poem is the turbid ebb and flow. Here, although there is no similarity between sea and human, the waves and human, but one of the point of similarity between human life and the flow of waves is continuous appearance of misery, and whereas in the sea the continuous appearance of waves is the point of comparison. So this is metaphor where although the point of similarity is only one and that is also hidden, it is not explicit. The next poetic device is simile. Simile is a figure of speech where two different things are compared to each other and the similarity is highlighted using the word as or like. And example in the poem is the sea of faith was once two at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. So, the sea of faith, which used to protect people, is compared here to the girdle, and the comparison is explicit here. It is very clear. So this is the third poetic device which is used in this poem. So like this, we come to end of this discussion. Thank you.